What is up, guys? I'm back in the garage, sprucing up. Well, not that side, I'm pretending that doesn't exist, but we cleaned up this side a little bit. Evo that we just got back here in the last carb video on the Mikuni rebuild for this guy. The Evo chopper's gone. 92 stocker Evo is back. Well, was back. And spent the last 3 days messing around with brakes on the Volvo wagon. Apparently they don't like sitting neglected for 2 years. So all of the brake stuff was rusted up completely on that. Did calipers, brake hoses, pads, rotors, you know, just refresh. So that's been taking up a ton of my time. I didn't film it. It's modern disc brake stuff. It's not overly complicated. But that's what we've been doing up at the shop while this thing has been sitting here. The carb is cleaned up and ready to go back on. I was looking at the comments. I just posted the video from when I brought this home and the getting it running video. Lots of information, lots of things that you guys are probably right about. On the first start video for this, let me just clarify for a minute. Set you guys down. I'm gonna take a seat. It's bright and early on a Saturday. So, here's where we're at. The mag is sparking really well. So that was the first check. Once it sparked, I slapped everything back together and added fuel, waited for a fuel leak in the carb. The floats weren't sticking. They were actually functioning semi as they should. The tangs were a little bent when we were doing the carb rebuild, so I leveled those out with the bottom of the bowl. That should help on fueling, and I know all of the passages on the carb are clear now. Everything's good there. I gotta get some drain hoses, and I still gotta replace the vacuum nipple here, but this should be good to go. In terms of hard starting, yes, it was very difficult. I don't know what caused the loss in compression, but if you go to the first attempt at starting this, the first kick, I had really strong compression, kicked it over, did a plug check, did a thumb test. Is it a brand new fresh motor? No, but it had plenty to fire. I've had enough mediocre compression bikes where I kind of know where that's at. Had enough to start, so we threw it on the lift, stood up on it, kicked through it. First kick, it coughed and smoke came out the carb. Second kick, or fifth kick, I don't know, the first attempt, it went da-da-da-da, and ran-ish. Not well, but it ran. That to me counts. Tells me timing's pretty close. Then we lost compression for whatever reason, and I don't know if the rings kind of got stuck in the groove from kicking through it or what, or whatever happened when that initial compression sputter occurred. I lost all compression through the kicker. So if you watch the whole video, I then took a little bit of oil, dropped some oil in the cylinders, tried to get some compression back. It was really weak. Then decided like an idiot to go through and continue kicking the thing. It would kick over okay, but it didn't have next to any compression for whatever reason. Had compression, lost compression, pulled the push rods, checked the valves. It wasn't an issue there. For whatever reason, I don't know if the rings bound up or that little sputter locked the rings into the piston where the rings weren't sealing or what. Not quite sure. But we power kicked through it. So in the video, when it's kicking back at me, I don't think it's a timing advance issue. In most cases, if you have a healthy motor and you're kicking it over and it starts kicking back on you early like that before, it's timing, 100%. Timing's too advanced, so it's firing too early before you can actually get it going through the compression stroke. That's why they sell a retardable base on these mags. That wasn't it. It was me bringing it up to roughly what I thought was a compression stroke, but I genuinely could not feel anything on the pedal. Kicker pedal was super sloppy too, so we got that all squared away. This is nice and tight now. Feed it with a hammer. You'll see that video as well, hopefully. And got that kind of locked in. Then the first ride video, still a pain in the ass to start, but we didn't go through the carb at all on this. So I didn't expect it to be a one-kick bike at all. Not yet, at least. That's kind of where we're at. I don't think it's a timing issue. I'm gonna pop the cap off of the mag right now. We're gonna go through that real quick and clean that up, just clean up the points. It runs pretty well with where it's at, so I don't want to mess with it. I mean, timing's not that big of a deal to set up and lock in, but as it sits, This thing ran great. It had its coughs and sputters, but I'm going to attribute a lot of that to the carb. Going through this in the video, the idle passage was barely open. If you held it up to the light, you could see just a sliver of light coming through there. I know it's a small passage, but I think that's the bigger concern there was just carb dirtiness from sitting. I am running stainless steel solid core wires here, 8.8 mil XLs, I think, based on the yellow color. So those were good. Spark is really healthy. I'm trying to avoid doing that. And now we're at this weird point. I want to go through and clean up the points and just, while I'm in there, I'll verify timing. But I don't plan on changing that yet. Carb's ready to slap back on. We could throw the carb back on, plug the wires in, hook fuel up to it, and try starting it. Here's where I'm stuck. I want to go through and clean up the mag while it's off because the carb gets in the way of this. It's also pouring oil out the rear rocker. On the rear rocker, this part up here, there's a gasket that goes in between here. The front's fine, you can do the front, it's accessible, but on the rear, I don't have clearance to get that rocker cover off unless I pull the entire head. At which point, if I'm going to pull the rear head, the intake's got to come off, motor mount bolt's got to come off. It's 4 more bolts and some push rods and an oil line to pull the front and the exhaust, obviously. So I think as of right now, I'm really leaning towards just ripping into this motor and doing a quick top end tear down. Then we can kind of see what it looks like on the inside. The cylinders don't have to come off. I didn't notice a lot of base gasket leaks, but I got to go through my stash. If I have brand new base gaskets, I wouldn't mind yanking the cylinders and just give it a quick drill hone on there and then slap it all back together, provided everything looks okay. If we get the heads off and they look terrible, I might change my mind, but I don't want to put a ton of money into this because it was running. There's a lot of things that need fixing, but I also don't know how long I'm going to have this bike. I love it, but it's too long, 1, for my lift, and 2, takes up a ton of space in the garage, and we don't have a shortage of motorcycles. So we have 4 now, like 4 runners, plus this one, if this counts as a project runner, we got 5. I don't really need 5 bikes, plus all the car. We're running out of space quick. So just kind of picking and choosing what we're going to do here. But just a quick little update in response to comments. What other ones do we have there? Timing, a lot on timing. I got one on doing a leak down on this. I don't really feel it necessary to go through and set up a leak down, because once we actually got this lid off, power kicking through without being able to find the compression stroke, I missed a ton of times and tried kicking through it off stroke, which is why it fired and kicked back on me. After going through it and eventually getting lucky and getting it fired up and running, it starts better than it did that first day, that's for sure. In terms of the leak down, if I pull the heads off, I'll give the valves a quick check. We'll do a light test through there. If I don't see any light, I'm going to send it. If we do see some light, then I'll pull it apart and maybe relap the seats. It's really just going to kind of depend on how far we get into the motor. I didn't want to do anything to this, but the leak in the rear, if you saw the riding video, it is smoking like crazy. It's not a little bit of a leak, it's a geyser of burning oil, and you're riding around with a cloud of smoke behind you. So there's the update on that. Carb's ready to go back on. We're going to dive into the mag today. That's going to be the second video later on this afternoon. It is early. It's like 8 or so. Not that early for me, but we got to go to the shop, get some work done, start moving some bikes around, and lay that out. I'm just stuck. I don't know if I want to go through the mag and then pop the heads off now. I know it needs to happen, so really I shouldn't. I know it runs, so yeah, that's what we're going to do. At some point today or tomorrow, we'll be messing around. I'm going to yank the top end off. We'll at least get the heads off. I definitely have head gaskets. I know that much. Head gaskets, maybe some pushrod tube stuff, because I know one of those is leaking pretty good. Just try and seal this up a little bit better and then slap it all back together and maybe she'll go. Part of me wanted to just throw the carb in and see if that fixed everything. Not the leaks, but mechanically fixed everything. Decisions. So I want to see if the carb and starting is better with just a carb clean before I address the motor problems. I don't know. We'll see what happens in the next video. Thanks for watching. I support the comments, I support the feedback. I learn from you guys. There's a wealth of knowledge in several of you. Please continue sharing your information. Oh, frame-wise, I got one comment that said it was like a hard head frame from the 70s. If anybody has any details on what this front frame section is, please let me know. I like learning these things in the comments. Well, I like learning these things, but leave me something in the comments if you know what it is, if it's helpful to pull the tank off so you can see where, I don't know how this is done. It's pretty straight all the way through here. I don't see any weld line or seam for where that would end or what the deal is, but here is the front end. It's got a slight little kick out down here in front of the generator. Comes back up to a nice taper. If this is a kit or a sectioned piece from another bike or another manufacturer, let me know in the comments. I like learning this stuff. And then in terms of the girder, is this a Durfee? Still don't know. Any chopper experts out there or vintage chopper parts, please let me know what these parts are. I like learning, and the only way to do it is asking questions. So we'll catch you guys on the next video.